Evening, everyone. Thank you for attending the Finance and Audit Committee meeting. We are going to wait 1 second until we have a quorum, and then the chair will start the meeting. So if you could hold on for 1 second, greatly appreciated. Okay, Chair Royce, we are live, and at your pleasure, please, and we do have a quorum, please do feel free to call the meeting to order. Thank you.
Okay, this is Roger Royce, Chair of the Finance and Audit Committee. This is our special meeting of December 13, 2021. First, I'd like to take a roll call. I can't see who's here, so could the members of the committee that are here announce themselves?
Carol Long is here.
Matt Normington is on.
Drew Holmes is on.
Any other members of the committee? Nick, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do, Chair. And I'm just checking the attendees. I do not see any additional committee members present, but we have a quorum with 4 members present.
Okay. So moving on to the agenda, we've got a pretty light agenda tonight, which is good since I've only got till 6:30. But everybody on the committee should have gotten a copy of the basic financial statement, which I think is part of the annual comprehensive financial report. Isn't that right, Nick?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And there'll be an opportunity for questions on that. We've got some a consent calendar. We've got some minutes to approve, and that's all there is for tonight. That's on our regular agenda. So with that, why don't we move right into presentations of the basic financial statement? It's a draft fiscal year ending June 30, 2021.
Mr. Chair, if I may, we inadvertently omitted public comment general public comment for items not on the agenda from the agenda. And if you'd be so kind, if we could add that to the agenda so that members of the public can address the Finance and Audit Committee.
That would be after D2, right?
That would be before D. So that would be just after agenda review.
Okay.
So right now.
So that's right now. All right. Yeah. So let's open it up for public comment then.
Very good. Thank you and welcome everyone to the December 13th Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Now is the opportunity to address the Finance and Audit Committee on any items not on the agenda. If you raise your hand or press *9 from your telephone, I will unmute your mic and you can address the Finance and Audit Committee. Again, this is a call for general public comment for items not on the agenda this evening. And if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand or press *9 on your telephone. This is a final call for general public comment. Mr. Chair, not seeing any, I return the meeting to you.
Okay, thanks very much. So our first item is presentation of the basic financial statement, draft fiscal year ending June 30, 2021. And I believe our auditor is here, right?
Yes, I will introduce the item, and then on D2, our auditors from LSL will be available for questions. So I'll go through a very quick presentation for the committee. We'll start with the financial highlights as of June 30, 2021. That's the end of our fiscal year. I'll briefly go through the Finance and Audit Committee's input for the previous financial statements, and then I'll outline the next steps. I do have an additional several slides that sort of go into a bit more of the details of the financial, of what is comprised or what the financial statements generally contain. However, in the interest of time, since we do have a hard stop at 6:30, I'll only bring those up if requested by the committee. So financial highlights, government-wide. So when we talk about the city's finances, we generally talk about the city's finances in two different ways. The first is all of our funds. Each fund is a separate and distinct entity, so to speak, with its own assets, liabilities, and fund balance, or net assets, net assets, and so we talk about them as a whole, and then we also review our financials on the fund level, primarily the general fund. So for the fiscal year, the city's overall, our net position increased by $1.6 million to just shy of $502 million. Our revenue saw a substantial decrease in fiscal year 2021 of $18.2 million for revenue of $87 million. Just as a reminder to the committee, this was the full year impact of COVID-19 and the impacts that the pandemic had on both the services that we provided to the community and also our tax revenue, primarily in the area of transient occupancy taxes. On the expenditure side, the expenditures did decrease about $2.3 million to $85 million, and that decrease was substantially related to personnel costs. However, most of the personnel is budgeted in the general fund, and so this decrease is not as large as you'll see in the next slide, and that's due to the sort of commingling factors of the multiple funds. As we look at the general fund, which is the city's primary fund for operations, for unrestricted operations, primarily comprised of tax revenues, the unrestricted fund balance decreased by about $700,000 for the fiscal year. This is a modest decrease in consideration of the next couple of items that you'll see down there, with our revenue and expenditure decrease, again, experiencing the full impacts of the pandemic. I think it's important to note here that the overall unrestricted fund balance is a little over, just shy of $41 million. Of that, the City Council has set aside about $29 million for committed contingencies. This is economic contingency, emergency contingency, and strategic pension reserve. In addition, our accounting procedures set aside another $4 million for encumbrances and anticipated capital project expenditures, which leaves us at the end of the fiscal year with $7.4 million in unassigned fund balance. I do want to note here that the City Council is considering or received a report at their last meeting that would assign $5.72 million of the unassigned fund balance for energy improvements to the Menlo Park Community Campus project, which is a joint project between the city, Facebook, and Meta and the local neighborhood to construct a brand new community center for the neighborhood. As I mentioned earlier, the revenues decreased by $9.1 million in the general fund. Again, this is primarily the charges for services in the areas of recreation and as well as other services that typically generate revenue. And then more to the effects of the pandemic, our transient occupancy tax decrease as well. And then on the expenditure side, the City Council did approach the 2020-21 budget with a desire to balance the budget, so the revenue losses offset by expenditure decreases, and we substantially achieved that goal. Pretty close, and again, those are mostly personnel and service reductions. So that provides the high level view. There's a tremendous amount of information in the basic financial statements. I wanted to turn next to the Finance and Audit Committee's input for last fiscal year. So just to highlight those, last year, or the Finance and Audit Committee's input. So this is the committee's charter. As you can see here, the council has asked the committee to review financial audit and annual financial reports with the external auditor, which is what we're doing here this evening. Resolution of prior year audit findings, and we will do that in January, as well as the review of the auditor selection process and scope. This is our third year with LSL. We last underwent a request for proposals and bidding process in 2018-19, and the City Council did award the contract to LSL with input from the Finance and Audit Committee in 2019. We typically use our auditors we typically work with our auditors, provided their services are responsive to the city and the community's needs, for 5 years. And LSL, we anticipate extending the contract with LSL for an additional 2 years, which was part of the original negotiated contract. The Finance and Audit Committee reviewed last year's financial statements and completed their review on December 17 for just a point of reference. Primary input from the committee, first was a concern about the discount rate used for pension liability calculations. The committee recommended that we use a lower discount rate, which would increase the liabilities on the pension liability on the financial statements. We had, in coordination with LSL, we had highlighted that the Governmental Accounting Standards Board does require that the notes to the financial statements provide a discount rate sensitivity analysis, which focuses on if investment returns are higher or lower than what was assumed. I think in response to the Finance and Audit Committee's recommendations, City Council did ask or direct staff to incorporate a 6.5% discount rate for budgeting purposes. So that's lower than what's assumed, and we are using that lower rate to help inform prepayment of the unfunded pension liability. Moving on to the water and solid waste funds. These two funds provide for utility services. The Finance and Audit Committee was concerned about the size of the fund balance as well as the rate setting process. We were able to clarify that the accumulated fund balance in solid waste is used for rate smoothing purposes. We see a tremendous impact of various state regulations, one of which goes into effect in January of 2022 related to food scraps and the compostables and composting those. And then secondarily, in our water fund, water utilities require capital investments, and both the funds that are remaining in that enterprise fund are used for capital improvements. And then finally, with respect to the rate setting, rates were set in accordance with state law, which is Proposition 218 and related court decisions. There was an expressed concern about the volume of information in the notes, and that they may detract from the usefulness and effectiveness of the document. The note disclosures are in compliance with GASB pronouncements. Again, GASB is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and they set the they set the accounting guidance for local governments. And I would just encourage those who are interested in the city's finances that the note disclosures, while they're long and have lots of technical detail in there, they are truly the most insightful references to the city's financials beyond sort of the bottom line. Lots of historical information that's important to understanding the city's current financial condition. Two other items, I'm not going to go into detail. I think that the one that was particularly most discussed, as Chair Royce may recall, was the timing or the timeline for the Finance and Audit Committee's review of the financial statements. And I believe that we're substantially on this timeline. We were hoping to get the financial statements to you in November, and so we're here this evening. We do intend to issue the statements by the end of this calendar year, and then transmit it to the City Council to receive and file in January. There really is no hard deadline to receive and file, and so if the committee does desire to have additional discussion at a future date, you are that is your discretion. So with regard to next steps, we have our LSL auditor here, Jocelyn, to answer any specific questions that the committee has. On December 15, our final edits and documents are due to LSL, so we can finalize the report. By the end of the year, we will issue the ACRF, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. Just a footnote here, GASB 98, the most recent pronouncement by GASB, directed that the name of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report be changed to the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, because the acronym for Comprehensive Annual Financial Report sounds very similar to a incredibly insulting slur that is inappropriate. And so the new name is ACRF, and we will transmit the ACRF to the Finance and Audit Committee Council and post it online by the end of the year. And then finally in 2022, in January, City Council presentation, and Council will receive and file the report. So that concludes my very quick presentation. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. If not, we would open it for public comment on my presentation. And then once the public comment is complete, we will move on, or the chair may move on to the next agenda item, which is to hear from our independent auditor.
I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
So I guess I'm a little fuzzy in the process here. Where's the audit report? Have these statements been audited?
Yes, they have. They have not been finalized. This is the third draft working in coordination with the independent auditor. So it's still in draft form, and they will be in draft form until we're able to provide the final edits and documents to LSL this Wednesday.
So we won't see an audit report then, I take it. Just an audit letter that's just given an unqualified opinion.
Yes. So the audit letter will be transmitted with the financial report by December 31.
Are these what we're looking at right now, the draft financials? Are they available on the city website?
They are, as part of the agenda for. Excuse me. Let me stop sharing my screen here. Yes, they are. They were part of the this packet, which is available online.
And this just went up like a week ago, right?
Yes.
And so if the public wanted to digest all of this and comment, I guess they really had about a week. I'm just wondering if that's enough time. Well, let me just ask you, historically, has Menlo Park put the draft financials online so people have an opportunity to see them?
No. The financial statements are the responsibility of management, and management makes their report, the auditor confirms whether or not their report was compiled in compliance with generally accepted accounting principles, as well as guidance from the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. And once the report is finalized by management, it is published and transmitted to the City Council, the governing board, for their information and to receive and file.
Okay. I've got a couple of questions about the financials and the report itself, but that should probably wait until after we hear from the auditor, I assume.
Yes, the questions about the financial statements themselves are best directed to the auditor, and if necessary, I or our interim financial services super manager can answer. Yes.
Okay. Do you want to open it to public comment?
Yes, sir. If any members of the public would like to address the Finance and Audit Committee on the staff presentation of the financial statements for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021, you may raise your hand now or press *9 on the phone, and you will be, I will call on you to provide your public comment. Again, if you'd like to provide public comment on the staff presentation of the financial statements as of June 30, 2021, please raise your hand or press *9. Final call for public comment on the June 30, 2021 financial statement presentation. And seeing no hands raised, Chair Royce, I turn it back to you.
Okay, at this point, we should open it up for discussion of the committee, I assume.
Yes.
And would it be appropriate for me to go into some of the details in here at this point?
If they're about the financial statements themselves, perhaps we can move to the next agenda item, right. and Jocelyn Potter, our auditor, can join us here. So I will. Okay,
I'm on item D2, questions for basic financial statement, and I guess our auditor, Jocelyn Potter, is here. Jocelyn, do you have a presentation, or are you just taking questions? Oh, you have to make her a panelist, I think.
I am. I believe I'm a panelist now, right? Can you guys see me?
Yep. Now we can.
Okay, thank you for your patience. And thank you for having me here tonight to help present with the financial statements. As mentioned, I'm Jocelyn Potter. I'm the audit manager for this engagement and have been for the past 3 years now, working with Nick, Patricia, and the team on the audit of the June 30th, 2021 financial statements. And so to provide a brief overview, I know there's a hard stop at 6:30, so I'll try to highlight on some key items. As Nick mentioned earlier, this is the full impact of COVID-19 and the pandemic, and as such, we performed the audit 100% remotely this year, similar to last year. And so what that involved was 2 phases of the audit. The first phase was the interim phase, where we perform various interviews, walkthroughs of different transaction cycles that are key to the financial statements, such as cash, expenditures, and things like that. We facilitated all of that remotely via Microsoft Teams and Zoom meetings, where we shared screens. We were able to walk through virtually the accounting software, request a few documents to really corroborate the inquiries that we had with each of the staff members. What that allowed us to do is not only provide recommendations that are useful and practical to the city in terms of strengthening internal control, but it allowed us to perform our risk assessment, in which we tailor a specific audit program that really guides this audit progress. And so with that, we performed year-end test work a few months ago is where we began, and we tested balances, we confirmed cash accounts as an example, performed a test of details and things like that. As Nick mentioned, we are in the 3rd draft stage of the audit. The draft that you have before you is the final form. I don't expect any changes to happen. As Nick mentioned, we are pending any final edits before we can release the audit reports and the letter that you mentioned, Chair. But as of where we stand today, I don't believe that there is anything that would prevent us from issuing an unmodified opinion. That's where we stand today.
Good.
I am available for questions. I did want to highlight two main things on the financial statements that you see. They relate to certain GASB pronouncements that were issued recently. The main GASB pronouncement that affects the financial statements and that required adjustment was GASB Statement 84. And it specifically discusses fiduciary activities. And what that had us do, it directed us to really evaluate the cities, because now they're called custodial funds. In the prior year financial statements, they were referred to as agency funds. And the statement had all agencies really evaluate the nature of their agency funds and really go through various checklists and analysis to determine if they were truly fiduciary in capacity, or if any of those activities really related to internal transactions of the city. And so specifically for the city of Menlo Park, the two agency funds in question and during that analysis were the refundable deposits and the payroll revolving fund. And you'll see that on the third draft of this current fiscal year's financial statements, those have been omitted. The adjustment that was made to the statements was we brought these two funds into the general fund. Through analysis with city staff, it was determined that these relate to city transactions, and as such, they are now included in the general fund. So that's the main statement. Another GASB 898, like Nick mentioned, changed simply the title of the annual comprehensive financial report. And the last thing to note is an upcoming GASB pronouncement, just to make sure that the city is aware, is next year, fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022, GASB statement number 87 will be in effect. And this statement specifically discusses leases, where we will be combining operating leases and capital leases, and both will be recorded on the financial statements.
Anything else?
Not at the moment, unless you have any questions, which I'm happy to answer.
Well, I do. And if you don't mind, maybe I'll start. I want to go to, I guess, this committee's favorite topic on these statements, it seems, and that's the pension liability. And it just kind of jumps out at you, the size of it. And I'm not challenging the way I know there's nothing we can do about that. But I was really impressed I looked at the sensitivity analysis. It's on page 45, I believe, it's in here, 44, 45. The sensitivity analysis, shows just what a big difference a minor change in that rate can make. And I'm glad that that's in here, especially for council, so they can see what a big variance we have. But one of the things that jumps out at me, I'm on page 44, is you assume an inflation rate of 2.5%. which I think we all know is nowhere near true right now. And I'm wondering, is that something that's just required by accounting rules, by statute? If there's any flexibility in that, and whether there should be a sensitivity analysis if we use different inflation rate assumptions?
To try and simply answer your question, as you mentioned, there are a lot of different assumptions that the actuaries use in their reports. That inflation that they measure and value is as of a few years ago. So the valuation date for this current fiscal year under audit was performed as of June 30th, 2019. And it was measured, the pension liability was measured as of June 30th, 2020. And so all of those assumptions were obtained directly from the actuary. And that's why I believe they used that 2.5 inflation rate. However, there was a recent event that occurred at late last month. In the final ACFR that you will be receiving, we will be including a subsequent events footnote specifically related to some of the assumptions that you see here. And it specifically relates to a new asset allocation mix that will guide the fund's investment portfolio for the next 4 years, while at the same time retaining the reduction of discount rate from 7% to 6.8%. So the notable changes for employers include a decrease in median and total employer contribution rates from less than 1% in miscellaneous plans to a decrease of more than 2% in some safety plans. So contribution changes will take effect in fiscal year 2023, 2024 for public agencies. And this subsequent event, although it was approved and decided on in November 15th of this year, as many agencies have been noticing and already commenting on, we've already been having this in the forefront of our minds for a few years now.
Okay, any other committee members have any questions or comments? All right, I don't hear any. So Nick, do we open it up to public comment for this, or is that closed? Nick's unmuted.
Yes, yes, Mr. Chair, I will call for public comment. So this is, if any members of the public wish to address the Finance and Audit Committee on the city audit, the city's independent auditors presentation, please do raise your hand now or press *9 on your phone to address the committee. Again, this is the opportunity and last call for members of the public to address the Finance and Audit Committee on the independent auditors presentation of the June 30, 2021 basic financial statements. Seeing no hands raised, Mr. Chair, I return it to you.
Okay, thank you. I think we can move on then. You don't need a motion on this at this point, I'm assuming, or do we?
No motion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item number 3, the consent calendar, item E rather. Item E1 to approve the minutes of the Finance and Audit Committee's November 3rd meeting. They are attached to the meeting agenda that was circulated. So do we have public comment on this, or do we just move? We do, okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. If any members of the public would like to address the Finance and Audit Committee on the draft meeting minutes, please do raise your hand or press *9 on your phone. It's the final call for public comment on the Finance and Audit Committee's meeting minutes. Mr. Chair, seeing none, you may continue.
Okay, any, I guess we should have a motion then to approve these minutes. Anyone want to make that motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, Matt, so moved. A second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a second. Is there any discussion? All right, then I will call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, then the motion unanimously passes and the minutes are approved. Is there anything else under E, Nick, that we need to discuss?
No, I think that's it for this evening, Chair Royce. I do want to thank the Finance and Audit Committee for the special meeting, and thank you for your time on this particular project. And if you do have any additional comments or questions on the financial statements, please do not hesitate to reach out to staff.
And being a special meeting, we don't take new business, correct? That would just be at our regularly scheduled meetings. And the next one of those, I think, is in April.
It's the first Wednesday of every quarter. So it's actually in January.
Oh, okay, January, right.
Yeah, so I will send out the note to the committee
Okay.
to arrange for that.
Okay, with that, then do we need a motion to adjourn, or can I just adjourn? All right.
You can just adjourn.
All right, we are hereby adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.